Hello everyone and welcome. I think we've still got a few people joining, but I'm going to kick off in the interest of time. So thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. My name is Ed Jevons and I'm the Global Vice President for Enterprise Performance Management and Business Intelligence at InnoApps. Today we're going to be taking a look at InnoApps solution designed specifically for one area within construction, cost-value reconciliation. So just a quick bit about InnoApps in case those on the line are not aware of who we are. Oracle is the vendor of the software, that is to say they're the ones that write the code line, and we are an implementer of Oracle software and have been for the last 10 years, as you can see with our little timeline down at the bottom there. We started out in the UK, up in Aberdeen, servicing more of the oil and gas industry, and we grew out organically to some of the more project-orientated industries such as engineering and construction. We specialize in all areas of Oracle and only Oracle, so we look after ERP, HCM, might be CX, the underlying technology, and of course EPM and BI, which is where our focus is going to be for today. We also have offices globally, as you can see with the little infographic there, and we have an offshore capability based out of Kuala Lumpur where we can service and support projects and follow the sun support as well, being in all those time zones. One of the accolades and awards I would point to here is we were the 2016 Oracle Specialized Partner of the Year for SaaS Cloud Transformation globally. So that's an award we won up against the likes of the Big Four and the big SIs. So we were really pleased to win that, and it's something that I think proves our credibility in looking after SaaS, that is to say cloud Oracle products, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. So we've got a number of different projects and clients in the cloud at the moment, various different modules of Oracle's, but one of them that you'll see quite heavily so that's Oracle's Planning and Budgeting Cloud Service, which we're going to be taking a look at today. And it's an area where we've developed this specific use case around CVR. We had a number of customers coming to us and prospective customers talking about CVR, it being a process which at the moment involves lots of people entering data in lots of different spreadsheets. And it was something that we found lent itself quite nicely to the Planning and Budgeting Cloud Service application. So we've been working, like I say, in the construction industry now for some time. We've got a number of different clients, some of which are on the call as well here. But suffice to say, we've been concentrating on more project-orientated industries now for probably the last 8 or 9 years. FM Conway is one such example where we've worked with them for a number of years through an early growth spurt of theirs, where they were moving to the next level, if you like, and their IT infrastructure in the back end required an understanding of their business, but at the same time someone that could give them that kind of best practice in terms of the industry. And we've worked with some larger clients as well in terms of the revenue and maybe some of the more high-profile engineering and construction projects from a UK perspective, such as Mace, who again have moved to an Oracle Cloud platform here, and this of course incorporates our planning and budgeting cloud service alongside a number of other back-end components such as the ledger side of things from the ERP and indeed procurement projects and their HR system with the human capital management there as well. In addition, we have Galliford Try as a customer of ours. We've been supporting them on some of their on-premises applications for quite a while, and it's an area where we've also been using some of our more proprietary modules such as the plant hire, which we might come on to in just a second, alongside the QR scanning application for the job cars there. So what I wanted to talk about is, from an application perspective, we have built the CVR model on the Planning and Budgeting Cloud Service platform, if you like. Now, why would you even bother using a solution when everyone's got access to these great spreadsheets everywhere? Well, these are some of the typical challenges that we find that customers face when using lots of spreadsheets in the back end. So very productive, and if you've got the right people using them, you can create some great spreadsheets with some great functionality. The issue we have with that, though, is that the data ends up tending to be siloed. So we have the kind of silos of data around areas such as, it might be HR looking after some headcount numbers, it might be someone in Treasury looking at M&A numbers, it might be someone, one of our project managers looking after CVR data. And those elements of data don't tend to be common with one another, and you end up having many different versions of the truth and many different reader bases of them. So senior management might have a completely different picture of the world to, say, finance or your financial planning and analysis teams. And we also get things like misaligned metadata. If the company restructures, maybe you go for a restructure of projects, maybe you add new customers, etc. You end up having to visit each and every one of these different spreadsheets, trying to correct them and re-add in that new structure and that new hierarchy. When it comes to ownership, some of these spreadsheets will often have one very protective owner, and it often gives you a kind of single point of failure if indeed that person leaves or moves on. Whilst it can be great whilst that individual is heavily invested in your organization, it does leave you with some liability on the off chance that that person leaves, or indeed that you need to transfer that person elsewhere, and someone else has to pick up the quite complicated spreadsheet that they've left in the background. Can be difficult to collaborate around spreadsheets. Of course, we all have access to things like SharePoint and file sharing applications, Dropbox, etc. But what that doesn't give us is a great deal of security. Basically, you either have access to or you don't. It can become quite difficult to give people access to different areas of a spreadsheet. So most organizations end up having several different spreadsheets with passwords, and only certain people can access certain ones, and the whole thing becomes a little bit of a web and a little bit difficult to navigate around. As a result of the fact you've got different people using different spreadsheets, there is often inconsistency around things like format and indeed accuracy. You might have someone who plans their projects out very accurately on a very refined spreadsheet with lots of their own formulas in, and someone else might use a slightly more barren spreadsheet that doesn't necessarily have the same sophistication. So you're really comparing apples with oranges when you start to aggregate those projects up or compare one to another. And we see this quite often when we go and visit. Even very, very large FTSE 100 companies tend to have some of these issues around spreadsheets. And finally, from an audit perspective, it's almost impossible to kind of trace back and find out who created what calculation at what time, unless you're recording every single version of a spreadsheet. Looking at prior versions of spreadsheets as well usually leads to the kind of wild inefficiency of having to save lots and lots and lots of versions of what can at times be, hundreds of thousands of rows in a spreadsheet, and it takes up lots of data. And realistically, people just don't have the time to go back through and kind of compare older spreadsheets. Normally that sort of task occurs at about 11 p.m. The day before a budget is due in, and the whole thing's very stressful and not necessarily the best way in terms of best practice. So what are we proposing instead? Well, we have the ability through Oracle's Planning and Budgeting Cloud Service to alleviate pretty much all of those issues that I just referred to on the left-hand side there. We have a single central store for all the data, irrespective of who is using it, so everyone is always looking at the same version of the numbers. So in the context of CVR, we might have 50 different quantity surveyors out there submitting numbers on site or refining their outturn for projects, and all those numbers will be saved in one place in the same place. So everyone's looking at the same version of the truth, one single version of the truth, to reuse an often used mantra. All of those structures, all of that metadata, whether it be adding a new job type, whether it be adding a new fixed cost to projects, etc., all of that is stored centrally, so you only do it once. So if I want to update the formula that I use within my organization to calculate my outturn, I update it once and in one place, and everyone who uses my system immediately benefits from that update. At the same time, With the planning and budgeting cloud service, it's not just a barren platform in the same way Excel is with the capability to build whatever you want. You can indeed build whatever you want, but at the same time, lots of other organizations are already using this platform to do very similar things. So you can see on the right-hand side, since February the 14th, 2014, when PBCS was launched, the planning and budgeting cloud service has over 2,300 customers, which reflects 123,000 plus end users. So this isn't a kind of niche tool being used by several hundred people. This is very widely used and very widely supported 24/7 from Oracle. It is a cloud tool, which means that there's no hardware for you to look after, and we'll come on to that in just a second as to why that should make a difference to yourself when deciding whether or not to adopt a tool. But suffice to say, the kind of ancestry of this product is the Hyperion suite, which you may or may not be familiar with if you've worked in finance, but it's been the industry-leading tool for planning and budgeting and for spreadsheet replacement, really, with enterprise solutions for the last sort of 10-15 years. So a very well-established platform that we're building on here. This isn't something new that's come out in the last couple of years. We're building on a proven and tested platform. A little bit more powerful and extendable than Excel, we would like to think as well, and some of the ways in which we can calculate out data and roll that up, we can hopefully show through some of our demonstration examples. And indeed, the reporting that we have is all that much more powerful than Excel. What we're not trying to do is take Excel away from people that need to crunch numbers, because it's a very good user productivity tool, so we still are able to connect into Excel. It's more a case of let's let people do that in a very controlled way, and let's alleviate all the issues that we saw on the left-hand side of that previous slide. Just a final point, the Planning and Budgeting Cloud service from Oracle, it fully integrates with any third-party solution. We call it sort of agnostic in terms of its source data supply. So irrespective of what you're currently using to feed in various costs, you might have costs linking in there from a third-party system, from a spreadsheet, from I don't know, a SAP ledger, whatever the case may be. You might have some planning and resourcing tools that you're using right now around your projects that link into your CVR spreadsheets. We can integrate with all of those and all of the above and more. So we decided to put an industry focus, obviously on this webinar we're looking at construction, and we have a number of these different solutions available. CVR is the one we're going to be concentrating and looking at today. When it comes to the construction solution portfolio that's available from Oracle, we have all of these areas in here covered. We don't have time to cover half of this in this webinar, so we're going to be focusing on cost-value reconciliation. Suffice to say, however, there are some larger deployments, and we saw an example of one of those in Mace at the introductory slides there. There are a number of different cloud solutions that can work within this industry, from everything from managing the bid through to the end analysis thereafter. And various elements of this are going to link into the cost-value reconciliation. To an extent, some of the forecasts might be driven by that. Certainly some of the analytics at the end is going to be influenced by that, and indeed the scheduling of manpower, who's going to be working on which projects at what time, what's their cost rate, is there a difference in my outturn in terms of the costs that I've suffered to date on a project due to the manpower scheduling and maybe lack of resources being available, etc. So it has hooks into many different areas. And indeed, we have an entire solution portfolio for construction and engineering that we can attest to and talk to you about a little bit more in future. What is the CVR process that we're going to be displaying today for the purpose of this demo? So we've tried to make it nice and simple. We're working on the basis that we have our quantity surveyor down there working on site, making amendments to their forecast based on what they're seeing. Incurring their costs, readjusting the margins that they're expecting on each of their projects by stream, by individual work stream. That could be all the way down to the individual work breakdown structure. They can do some modeling in a Whatif or sand pit analysis area if they wanted to do some modeling before they submitted those numbers up. So they can, without affecting the rest of the plan, they can take that off into their own private area and do some modeling with all the same calculations. When they're happy with that, they can promote that data up to, in this case, we've got it going to a project manager, and the project manager is able to review that data themselves. Maybe the project manager has some overlay costs and attributes that they would add to their plan as they're going along that the quantity surveyor doesn't see. So they're able to review the plan and make amendments to it themselves until finally they copy that through to a final version that gets submitted up to finance. And in each of these stages, you'll see the little dotted red lines there pointing backwards. There is this concept of being able to accept or indeed sort of refuse and decline any of these plans that are being submitted and give some narrative around that. So you might be saying, no, actually, we can't accept that level of margin because of X, Y, Z. And it can go all the way back down the chain and back up again. So you've got a nice sort of workflow here throughout that CVR process. Now, we obviously we're cognizant of the fact that that process is going to be different depending on the organization in question. We've spoken to about 7 or 8 different construction firms, looked at their CVR in some detail. None of them have been alike, but there's a lot of common themes that we've built into our demonstration. So you might have to use a little bit of imagination there. Just finally, we keep talking about this being a cloud service. Just some of the benefits of that is that the quantity surveyor can actually use that on site. So they're able to access that directly from their iPad as long as they have access to the internet, or indeed a laptop or a Google device or even your phone. When it comes to actually acquiring the technology, you only pay a monthly fee, and when you're done with it, you can turn it off. So it's not a case of buy licenses up front and then keep paying maintenance. And what that means is that really your success is kind of tied to Oracle's success now. So it's very much in their interest to keep you happy month on month so that you don't stop using their technology. Obviously, you don't have to get all your hardware ready in advance. You order, and within a week you'll have your cloud service ready to use. And from an innovation perspective, because you're using this directly off the cloud, it's a bit like going to Amazon.com. You're always on the latest version of Amazon.com. You're never on the version from 2015 or whatever. So there's none of these upgrades that need to occur every 3 or 5 years, which would often have been costly and prohibitive with on-premises solutions. So enough talk. Let's have a look at the application itself. And I'm going to hop straight in here to a Firefox browser, and I've been talking so quickly that it hasn't timed out in the background, which is always a good thing. So we're imagining that I've logged in as one of those quantity surveyors. If we recall back to the little matrix that we had, or route maps, I'm going to start as the quantity surveyor into sums along. It might be within the solution, which obviously covers a far wider remit than just CVR. We're going to be taking a look today at one of our task lists that's been set up for CVR. I could also be updating, revenue or cost or capex and depreciating assets, etc., etc. But for now, we're going to stick with CVR. And the first task I have here is my project health. So we can store non-financial data within here as well. Here I've got some kind of traffic lighting around my specific project here. So we're doing a project where the customer is National Grid, and I've got various different sub-projects in there, and I've got various different contracts or WBS breakdowns within there. So I can tinker here with my sentiment analysis around any of these different areas on a per monthly basis. So just some traffic lighting where we can record how we're doing from a customer relationship perspective, how we're doing from a kind of supply chain perspective, sustainability, any of the things that we are measured on within our project. I can measure that within here. And the nice thing is I can therefore use that when reporting, and I can compare one project to another as we go along. And this gives management a nice place to be able to record some of that information. The other nice thing is that we can actually influence some of these numbers, some of these traffic light results as a result of the CVR as we go through, depending on how we set this up. So we'll see at the moment that this first contract, we've got this green traffic light there for the financial revised numbers, and we'll see how we can make an impact to that for the negative, unfortunately. So going in and looking at the actual year to date and the forecast in the same view here, again, I'm looking at the month of March specifically. I've got my net sales value, my margin, and then a margin percentage being calculated out for a number of different what we call scenarios. So I've got my year to date actual, I've got my full year forecast, which I can tweak because the cell is white. So very similar to Excel type interface. White cells I can enter, however, grey cells I cannot. I've got a revised net sales value and a margin revised that I can tweak for the full year forecast here. And indeed, I've got my end forecast, including any claims for this month, and I've got one where I can revise that. So we can see at the end here, we're calculating out some percentage margins. I might have learnt that for the Ipswich tidal barrier, this contract, we know that we're not going to get anywhere near the 400 margin we were expecting here, so I might have to revise that down to 100 based on some detail that I know of on-site, maybe late delivery, maybe we've come up against some other technical issue, lack of resources. So I just type in 100 there, click save, and that calculates out to let me know that I've now got a red traffic light there, so I'm no longer within the threshold of margin that I was looking for. And the system might prompt me here to enter some commentary around that, so I can put delay due to, and then I can make up my excuses there, and just save that data back in there, so that anyone else reviewing this plan can find out about why it was that we had to revise that margin down. Now we're using a calculation here. We've got a net sales value, and then we're manually inputting the margin. Equally, we could have a triangle here in terms of we could affect the cost and have the margin calculate, or indeed we could tweak the revenue and have the margin calculate. So this is just an example of a calculation, and you guys might do this in far more detail or less detail on the per project by work breakdown structure level. But the point is, it's quite flexible in so much we can calculate this out however we like. And we've got the metric we're interested in. Our revised percentage for March of margin is down to 3%. So if I were to visit now through my actions menu, that review of the project health, I might see that that there has decreased, and that financial revised has gone down to red as a result of me tweaking those numbers. So these traffic lights can be driven by the other data within your actual plan. So let me move back to this spreadsheet. As the QS on this project, I might actually want to do some modeling of Whatif data. So at the moment I'm working in a version called my working version. So rather than using my working version, I might want to just take a copy of this offline and use my Whatif version. So I've got a Whatif version that only I have access to here, so the financial management don't necessarily have access to this version. And all I want to do here is just copy across from my working. So I'll launch my little rule there, a business rule in the background runs, and that just copies anything I had in my working version into Whatif. So there's no using copy and paste and accidentally putting things in the wrong cell. Everything's systemized. All I need to worry about now is getting into the numbers and modeling out, what are things going to look like if this guy here takes a turn for the worse, but maybe we can make up a little bit of margin on this guy down here. And I can start playing with the numbers, and all the same calculations will be reflected that are reflected on my main version. So it just gives users a nice sandpit there to work. And again, we're looking at one customer here, and a couple of their contracts. We could have hundreds of rows in here, and we could go down to individual task phases, etc. And we could break out the margin into what was the material cost, what was the workforce cost, what was the project management cost, etc., etc. So a nice little area. When we're done with that, I could come back in here and then I could copy that back to my main version there, and copy that data across when I was ready. And then promote that data along. In addition, I can record some other details against the different projects and the project streams I have. So on here, we can also record things around here: who had the design responsibility for the project, any metadata really. What was the contract type? What was the customer type? When did it start? When was it due to end? And indeed, I can see, based on the tender, what was the net sales value and the margin that we were supposed to be achieving. So I can start to do comparison from one to the other and make sure that, that things are as we expected. And if they're not, I can drill down to that level of detail that we had in that previous view and figure out which month was it, for example, where we lost all the margin on a project. Is there any patterns that are developing there across multiple projects at the same time or multiple streams? Maybe that's something that can be alleviated if we resourced better globally as a company, kind of thing. So lots of different ways by which we can cut this data up and analyze it. The point is, whatever your spreadsheet is right now, we can move that into this solution that we have here on the web. If we were to take a look at some other views here, we have the kind of sign off within the business. So I am the current owner of a given set of data. We call that a planning unit. So I might be the owner for that national grid customer, for example. And once I was happy with my numbers, I'd done my sandpit analysis, I would then be able to promote that up to the next person on the chain there. So in order for me to do that, I'm going to change the status. I'm going to approve that up, and I can write numbers adjusted to take into consideration, and I can write some narrative here, and I could then choose who the next person was to submit that to, or I could leave that at automatic, and I could click change status. So I've now moved that data on, I've pushed that up the tree, and whoever the other person was that I'd approved that or I'd promoted that data up to, they would receive a notification in their inbox saying there's a new data set for you to either approve or indeed to refute or to post back down based on the annotations and the data that's been submitted. And this back and forth of approval and the actual status and the narrative is recorded each and every time. So you're able to see for National Grid, for example, why did it take 6 hours for that to get promoted? I can see what did the quantity surveyor say, what did the financial manager say, what did the PM say, etc. And it records all that from an audit perspective. So that narrative side of the reporting, which isn't captured very easily or well at all with spreadsheets because it's normally done by email, we're capturing some of that as well. Let's move on to next task that we have in here. So just another view of the world, really. We've got this view that we've been using as a quantity surveyor. We also have the ability to take that same data and kind of map it out by whether that be by individual work breakdown structure or by projects within a specific grid. And each of these represents a drop down where I could then choose from different contracts that existed within that work breakdown structure. So within here, within finance, I might be doing some profiling at a higher level. I might say for year total level, rather than updating month on month, I might want to influence a financial forecast and do some modeling up at this level. I could at year total put in 17,000, for example, and it will just break those numbers back across all the quarters and all of the months. And likewise, I could do the same thing at a quarterly level. I could just start playing with the numbers here. And you'll see as I change numbers at any level of that hierarchy of months into quarters into total years, all the other numbers update at the same time. So something that would be very, very formula driven within Excel and prone to error, it's all handled within the kind of financial intelligence, as we say, within the system of PBCS. So again, I'll just amend that up, put that up to 24,000. You'll see that proportionally spreads all my numbers based on the weighting that was in each of those, and I could just save that data away and see what that would look like as a comparison of my forecast to budget. When it comes to reviewing some of that data as well, we've got a number of different means by which I alluded to at the very beginning. We'll take a look at some of our dashboarding capability. Again, all available on mobile and all available straight out of the box. There's no extra license fee here. I can look at the operating expenses, for example, by various different I guess product lines or service groups within my construction organization. I can look at the operating profit margin, and I can visualize these for any number of different projects in any number of different visualizations. These dashboards are user built, so there's no code behind the scenes. These are all drag and drop in terms of, I want to put a donut chart in there, I want to put a form in here. And the nice thing about these as well is that you can actually update the numbers within this view as well. So if you prefer this more visual view where you want to update your numbers, you can do that. I can type within here, save away my data, and use this as if it were one of those forms that we were looking at just now. So very good when it comes to the actual reporting we're able to do from a kind of visual dashboard perspective. Likewise, if I wanted to take a look at some more highly formatted reports, something that I might deliver to a board, for example, we've got that as well. So I don't know, you might want to get out a consolidated income statement or whatever the case may be, so I can drive that out, choose the period I want it for, choose the version, and then get that as a HTML. And this is print ready, so this would be something that you can automatically send to all your managers for their specific region. And of course, this can be tweaked to the nth degree of detail. You can have different lines in here. We could have this for different projects rather than different entities in the UK. We could have logos, all the rest of it. So just some examples of some of the reporting and how those look. I've got a balance sheet up here as well, which we can open up in HTML. All of these, you'll notice, can also be opened up as PDFs. So here's an example of a statement of income in PDF as well, and how that would open for an end user. And there's my balance sheet just in there. Finally, the thing that I wanted to show is that any of that functionality we've seen today can also be used through Excel. So within Excel, I can connect directly using this Smart View add-in to my planning and budgeting cloud service system. And if I wanted to take a look at some of those reports I was looking at earlier, I choose them from my task list, which you'll remember we had in the web front end, and I can click on Open Form, and here's that same form for me to use. So I still have all the flexibility of Excel. I don't have any formulas in any of my cells. All I'm seeing are the results, and I can still update the numbers. So I've changed that to 850, and that was the guy I changed earlier to 100 at the beginning of the demo. Let's put that guy back up to 450, and then I click on Submit Data, and it recalculates my percentages out. And then when I went back to my project health, for example, we should find that, yeah, the financial revised has gone back to green. So all that same functionality we were looking at in the web front end, but we've got it within Excel as well. But you just have that much more control over what people are inputting. We've covered it a lot in a very short period of time. I'm conscious that that demonstration won't reflect your current CVR process per se, but it is just a mixture of some of the themes that we've seen from various different clients that we've been speaking to in this area. We would be very keen to do something a little bit more bespoke and have a more in-depth conversation with yourself, and we would invite people, if they do have any questions, to ask those using the question facility on your little right-hand side bar at the moment. Aside from that, we'd like to thank you for your time as well. I appreciate that it's difficult to find 30-35 minutes during the day to attend these things. We do welcome feedback. There's no point us doing this if it's not useful to you. I've been Ed Jevons from InnoApps. Thank you very much for your time, and if there's any questions, happy to answer them. Otherwise, we will be in touch with you around what you've seen today. Thanks again.